Welcome to another episode of the Little Jolly Gamer Show podcast. If you're listening to this on the RSS feed, then this is episode 82, and today's date is the 27th of April, 2018. And the show's going to be a little different because Jacob's not here and Steven's not here. But instead, Mr. Tyler Gray Sawyer is here.
Hello,
thank you,
Brandon.
Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Brandon Lee Jolly, because since I outed you with your...
Be Jolly.
Be Jolly.
Lil Be Jolly.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, this is our Spoilercast for God of War for PS4. We talked about it last week, and we kind of gave our first impressions, and we're totally spoiling everything. So if you do not want the game spoiled for you at all, turn away and come back later. Yeah, walk away. Put it down and walk away, because this is going to have... We're going to spoil everything about this game. The story, the gameplay, everything. So, get out of here. Go. What are you still doing here? Get out of here.
Peace.
All right. Is everyone out of here? All right, now we can continue. All right, so usually on the show we talk about what we've been playing during the week, and we talk about gaming news, and we might even give us some side quests and talk about
best fast food.
Best fast food, yeah, we could do that sometimes. But today we're not doing any of that. We're flushing the format, and we're going just with God of War Spoilercast, and that's going to be the name of this video, is God of War Spoilercast. So God of War came out Friday. And
to okay reviews.
To pretty okay to I mean, some people gave it 10 out of 10s. Some people gave it 9 out of 10. I haven't seen much worse than that.
Oh yeah, it's got like a 95 on Metacritic.
Yeah, it's a really good game.
It's incredible.
I played it an unhealthy amount, so I kind of finished it really quickly. I didn't rush through it. I just played like 40 hours in less than a week, which is a lot for me. So,
or anyone.
On the last episode, I want to say we talked about, and I know you weren't here on the last episode, so if you'd like to put any input, you can do that.
Toward the beginning stuff.
Yeah, we talked about just the beginning 7 hours. We talked about pretty much right up until after the Baldur fight.
Okay.
I think. Now, I was a little bit further, but that's where we left it, and we didn't talk about Baldur. We called him the Stranger.
Yeah, that wasn't revealed till later.
Yeah, which is... well, we didn't want to spoil anything on it.
For sure.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the first boss fight. It's kind of what I want to start with.
The Troll or Baldur?
Baldur. Let's talk about Baldur. That was an insane boss
It
fight.
was. Yeah, it definitely was. It was very much in keeping with like classic God of War standards by putting like an important boss in front of you, an important god. But they did it really well in that they didn't reveal who it was until later.
Yeah, we didn't know he was a god. I mean, obviously he had some kind of superpowers. But he had some kind of superpowers, but we didn't know who he was.
The fact that they were like, I loved how they introduced him by there was this really loud wind sound, and then you just hear like a crash, and then at the door.
Yeah,
I thought this dude flew there. You find out later how he actually. Well, I guess he rides a dragon.
Yeah, he rides a dragon.
This is the spoiler cast.
And I was the same thing. I was like, where'd this dude? I just heard like, and I was here, knock. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
But I don't know a whole lot about Norse mythology.
Right.
I know enough to get by.
When the cop pulls you over and he quizzes you on your Norse mythology.
Yeah. Do you know who Baldur is?
Okay, you're not drunk. It's cool. You can go.
Spell Baldur.
Backwards.
But he, I didn't know what his powers were, and it explains it throughout the game why he's so powerful and indestructible. He is invulnerable. Right. And later in the game, you find out that he is related to another character we meet later in the game. But I want to talk about the actual fight itself. Holy crap. Like,
yeah, it's really great.
Like you're punching his head into a tree, the tree splits, you pick it up and you shove it into him, and you run him into a mountain, and that's not enough to stop him. And I think it was a really important battle to show that Kratos is showing his age. Like he's getting old.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not getting any younger.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Now he's obviously he's still God, but we don't know what does age do to Kratos.
Right. Yeah, I liked that fight a lot because you're right. It did show that three-dimensional side to Kratos that he's got some wear on his body. You know, his joints are creaky.
You can see the wrinkles in his face.
Right. But one thing going into this game that I was interested to see how they play it out is that because of the way that they did the camera and knowing that this is a more focused, more somber game, I wasn't sure if we were going to see more of that really over-the-top action. Like, I think in God of War 2, there's that scene where the Titan has him between his fingers, and he's, like, trying to squish him. Mm-hmm. Just the most ridiculous...
I think this Kronos does that, I think, right?
Yeah.
And 3.
Oh, yeah, it must be
like,
3.
He can't do it.
Exactly. Just the most ridiculous, like,
that part where, like, the blade of Olympus just barely pokes out of his stomach and goes, like... You have to tap circle to, like, hack, and it just goes... like, all of his intestines come out.
Just really absurd action, and, like showing the, like, what Kratos can do. He doesn't have much in the way of godlike powers. Like, he's not throwing lightning bolts or anything like that. But the dude is really strong. He can't jump very well. That strength is very much upper body.
Well, remember, like, whenever in God of War 3, he had, like, the wings of Icarus, and he just jump and fly.
Yeah, for sure. But you would assume, like, with the Hulk is this incredibly strong person, and that dude can jump. When he slams down on Hulk and Thor.
He don't even need to fly.
Exactly.
He could just be like, okay, I need to jump for about 45 seconds. Let me just...
In one comic book, he jumped to the moon. But Kratos...
it's ridiculous.
Kratos is strong like that, but he doesn't have that kind of leg power.
Well, they don't show his legs anymore. His legs are covered up by pants. That's the real... tragic 2 out of 10.
I know. I gotta see some more Spartan legs.
Kratos legs.
My next God of War game.
I thought that was crazy that battle just to set the tone of the game was like, whoa.
Yeah.
What am I going to be running into later? Which turns out Baldur is kind of the main antagonist of the whole game.
Sure.
And throughout the game, they're constantly talking about Thor and Odin and how they're constantly talking it up. It's kind of like the Gruntilda effect from Banjo-Kazooie, where you have this antagonist that you keep that keeps. Well, I don't even think that's an accurate comparison, because Gruntilda is talking to you and just antagonizing you the whole time. But these characters you just keep hearing about.
Right.
You don't even see them.
Yeah.
Until towards the end of the game, you see one of them, and we'll get to that part later.
Really, really good moment, that one.
But throughout the game, you also meet this witch in the Witch's Woods. Turns out to be Freya, one of the past wives of Odin and father of Baldur. And it kind of creates this...
Mother of Baldur,
yeah. It kind of creates this awkward situation where later in the game, Kratos and Atreus are having kind of a hard time. Like, who can we trust? Can we trust her? And at the end of the game, it's still not clear.
Right.
Who you can trust.
It's left. Like, the player is meant to decide what level of trust they put in the character, because Atreus and Mimir both express like a level of trust toward Freya, but Kratos expresses his doubts. So I like how they leave it ambiguous. The game leaves this ambiguous for the player to decide where they line up. Because I feel like if you get 10 people in a room and they all give their opinions on Freya's motivations, people are going to have different opinions. Yeah. And the great thing about it is that there's no concrete answer.
No.
You know? So
nothing's for certain, and we definitely know that at the end of the game.
She definitely lands in a gray area toward Kratos and Atreus, which I appreciate a lot.
Yeah, by the way, we're not going to be explaining all the events. We're going to assume that you played the game too. So you get Mimir's head, you cut his head off at the top of the summit of the mountain, the highest mountain in Midgard, and he kind of acts as the advice giver of the game.
Right, yeah. He's the Cortana.
He's the Cortana, or he's the Navi.
The Navi, yeah.
He's probably the most least... Like, most games you get a companion that follows you around, you're like, oh god, shut up, I don't want to hear anymore. He's the only character where I would stop. I'd stop rowing the boat to hear something he was telling me. Yeah. Just to listen to him talk about stuff in the lore to teach you things, or his input on a situation. Right. I've never done that before in a game. Usually I'm just like, can I just skip this cutscene? I don't want to hear Navi talk about, I need to go to the volcano. Yeah. I know. Yeah, this guy, he's just kind of like, you'll even get out of the boat, he's like, oh, I'll finish this story later. Right. You know, I'm not going to bother you about it. Just whenever we have time to sit and talk, we'll sit and talk. Right. Which I thought was a genius move.
Yeah, definitely so. I mean, they kind of mask... The game does it does a lot of these things where in typical games, it's like the sit the controller down, look at the phone moment. Mm-hmm. The game masks that stuff a lot with places of entry, like when you're rowing the boat, like you mentioned, or when you use the very limited fast travel system early on, but you're just running around the tree or whatever. That's another moment where Atreus and Kratos may have some dialogue, or Mimir may express some more lore stuff.
And it's unique too. It's never the same thing. Like, hey, we should go to the mountain, and then you get back in. Oh, we should get to the mountain. It's never the same thing over and over.
It's not the same line.
It's unique to the situation. Like it's like you just freed a dragon or something like that, and then you go to the World Tree fast travel, and then Atreus is like, oh wow. dragons or whatever, and they start talking about dragons, and then Mimir's like, oh yeah, the dragons, and then Kratos is always just kind of like, But I kind of want to touch on one of my notes I wrote down here is the boat rides in general. One of my favorite parts of the game wasn't the action, it was just the way Kratos would interact with some of the other characters, specifically Atreus, his son. Whereas in old games, Kratos was just like, I don't care, I'm gonna kill you. Like, hey, I bet you can't solve this riddle for this key. Oh, I'm just gonna rip your head off and take the key and then make you suffer for it. Now he actually has a little bit of humanity to him. He's not necessarily sympathetic, because a lot of times you'll find these ghosts who are like, oh, help me, my son stabbed me in the back with this dagger, and then Kratos is like, we're bound to find good gear there, and that's the only reason I'm doing this. But, Atreus, if you want to go, I'll take you, but I really don't want to do this.
But Kratos' intuitions are right sometimes as well.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because he knows what he's getting into, almost every time. Like, he'll be like, oh, this is going to be a trap. And then it's a trap, and then Atreus is like, how'd you know? And he's like,
I've seen this.
It's like, I've been through this.
I've seen it a million times. And that's another example of the game leaving the ethical compass kind of ambiguous. Like, Kratos doesn't always have the right answers, and just being the good guy, which Atreus is like the embodiment of like a naive goodness. And that's often whenever you play a game like Fallout or Mass Effect or something, and you have the good and evil option. It's like, I'm gonna do the good option. BioShock even, because the good stuff always comes with doing just the good options. But
most of the time,
if Atreus is like the embodiment of just the good options, he often turns out just to be wrong. Just flat out wrong.
He's just like, wow, we shouldn't have trusted that guy.
And Kratos is like overly skeptical view on life sometimes turns out to be wrong. Not necessarily wrong, but he's corrected on things along the way.
Yeah, even there's one moment where it's a trap, and I forget what part specifically, but Atreus is like, I know, you told me so. Go ahead and say it. And then Kratos is just like, don't take it as a disappointment. Take it as a lesson.
Right.
And I thought that was crazy. I was like, oh my gosh, why can't every video game hero be like? Why can't they just be like, oh wow, there's the bad guy went up the cliff. Let me climb right up. And then usually Kratos is like, we probably shouldn't go up the cliff.
Yeah.
But the boat rides specifically, Kratos, whenever you don't have anything like really serious going on, Kratos and Atreus will just kind of banter. Like Atreus will be like, oh, tell me a story.
Right.
And oftentimes Kratos will tell him these like old fables, like the tortoise and the hare. But the
horse and the stag.
Yeah, but he'll tell the most like disconnected version of it, to where it's just like it's told without any kind of humanity.
It
or
loses
passion.
all of its conflict.
He just kind of tells it where he's just like, the tortoise and the hare. The hare was fast and careless, and the tortoise was collected and steady. The tortoise won.
Right.
And he's like, that's it? That's the story? And he's like, yeah.
Hey, I mean, that's the equivalent of looking at like a plot synopsis on Wikipedia or something.
It's just weak, and it's funny because it's coming from Kratos. It's like he's trying.
He got the facts of the story. Everything he said was true, but he lost all of the conflict.
Like he lost all the soul that comes with telling a story, and then like the way Mimir would tell a story.
Yes, yeah, definitely so.
And Mimir's there for the ride too. Mimir kind of acts like he kind of takes his uncle Mimir pretty much.
That is funny. I wonder, at the end of the game, I was wondering, like, where does Mimir go? Like, of course, Mimir's going to show up later in the games. But what happens between God of War 1 and God of War 2? Where's Mimir at this point? Because last we see, like, the last big narrative moment of the game, you go back to the house. But, like, he's there, but Kratos just sits on him and, like, lays down. Like, do they get a jar and carry him around like Futurama? What do they do with Mimir?
That's a good question. I don't know. I kind of like having Mimir just
dude, yeah. He's a brilliant character.
But he can't, I don't think he can't get his original body back, because it's I guess maybe at the end of this new trilogy, I'm assuming it'll be a trilogy, maybe he'll get his body back.
Chop down the tree.
But some of those fables, you noticed a cool comparison, was one of them was it's basically telling the events in a very vague way of God of War 1.
The horse and the stag.
The horse and the stag, where he talks about the horse wants to fight the stag.
Yeah.
So he goes to the farmer for help, and then the farmer puts the saddle on him. He beats the stag, but the farmer never takes the saddle off,
the horse becomes the hunter slave.
The hunter slave, which is basically Ares and the Blades of Chaos and everything.
But the selling part is that Atreus asks, well, man, I hope revenge was worth it. And Kratos is like, one-line delivery, it wasn't.
No, it was not.
Yeah. No contractions. That's right.
And he also says one last story on the boat ride where I forget what he's talking about. I think it's one of his past experiences. And whenever he actually tells a story and finishes it, Atreus is like, "No, that was a story."
Yeah.
And I can't remember what it was he was telling.
I think it was the story of Atreus, the Spartan.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was the story of Atreus, and he was like, "No, that was a story." Yeah. That's at the very end.
Yeah, it is.
Because he asked where he got his name from. And we were talking about the Blades of Chaos earlier, and Ares, and I wanted to talk about one of my favorite scenes of the game, which was when you go back for the Blades of Chaos.
Right.
And me personally, I didn't think we were getting the Blades back. I kind of think you had your doubts. It's like, oh, we're probably gonna get the Blades back.
Yeah. I figured as much. The scene, you're going back to Baldur, but the scene where Baldur shows up and Kratos knows that stuff's about to happen, and so he has to stash Atreus away, and so he's like, get him to the house, and Atreus is like, you told me never to go under here, and Kratos is like, just go, get out of the way. And I was like, oh, okay, well that's symbolic.
Obviously something's down there. Yeah,
that's symbolic of Kratos' history, his past. He's trying to keep it buried from people, but he has something down there. Like he has Hela's head or something, but it ended up being the Blades of Chaos. And interestingly, whenever I was thinking about this game before I had ever played it, or before I got the Blades of Chaos, I expected the Blades of Chaos to come back. But I was worried how they were going to do it, because, not worried, but I was interested to see how they play it out. In God of War, the original trilogy, everything is fixed camera. It's zoomed way out, and that you can see the entire battlefield.
When you're slinging them blades around, you can see all the
if you kept your eyes focused on it, you could watch a blade in its entire motion.
And it's funny because on our last podcast, on our first impressions, we were talking about the axe is a cool weapon. We kind of for this gameplay style, you're gonna have to have the axe. You can't have the Blades of Chaos in this game. I even said that I was like, the camera angle, the way it's set up, you can't have the Blades of Chaos. Yep. And to see how they did it just blew my mind, dude. Yeah. I was excited because when you first get them, so in the scenario, Atreus, something happens where he rages out, but he has this curse about him because he's Kratos' son. And we don't know what exactly that curse is. They kind of leave it ambiguous. But obviously Kratos is not supposed to be in this land, and mixing blood may have had something to do with that. But Atreus is hurt, and they say, hey, you gotta go to not Niflheim, Helheim, which is hell. You have to go to the underworld, and you need to get this, you gotta get the heart of this gatekeeper to save your son, but your weapon's not gonna work there, because everything there is icy cold, like the icy hand of death. And you're like...
The seventh layer of
They're
hell.
like, you're gonna need a different weapon. And I'm like, oh, we're not gonna get a different weapon. And he's like... Kratos is like, I must return home. And I knew my wife was in the room with me when that happened, and she was like, he's going to get the blades. And I was like, and on the boat ride there, he's riding the boat from the witch's grove to his home. We get a vision of, now I'm assuming this is in Kratos' head.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's Athena, which was the only thing left alive in Greek world, which is what I'm going to refer to it as.
The best theme park.
And she's talking about how you're never gonna change. You can't be any better than what you are. You can't be a father. What do you think you're doing? And then he's just like, I've changed. Yeah. Get out of my head. And he gets the Blades of Chaos from his basement, and they're all worn out. There's no magical runes. Right. They're just these old, decrepit-looking blades, and that's how you have them for the first
until you upgrade them.
You upgrade them, they're just kind of like these old things, and they're weak. They're really weak.
They really are, yeah.
But they're doing good, for
I think they only added 5 in the strength or runic category.
Yeah, for chaining combos, they're good, and the runic, they're more elemental than they are damage.
Right. Yeah.
And
crowd control.
I thought that was cool because when you walk out of the house, it's like, hey, here's a bunch of Draugr.
Right.
Let those blades free, and I was like, oh my god, it's like seeing an old friend. It was like. Oh, it was my favorite moment of the game.
It was a great moment. Yeah, definitely so.
I was whipping those things around, and by the time you get them fully upgraded, those things are beasts. I don't even I use the axe for okay, there's a heavy guy, I'm using the axe. Yeah. But I use the blades for everything else, and just it was like, okay, this is God of War. Right. This is where that little bit of God of War flavor comes in. Yeah. But not too much. They didn't overpower. They didn't mess up the rest.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's why you get them in the last third or however long.
Yeah.
But you and I were talking about it after I had gotten to that point in the game where you get the Blades of Chaos. We were talking about the different usages of each weapon. Because even if you go back and you try to use the Leviathan axe in some of these areas where you're getting overrun by mooks or whatever, it can be a struggle. it can be a struggle trying to deal with a big crowd just with a Leviathan axe because it's more of a singular focus.
Yeah,
singular
it's like
enemy
you're kind of
focus.
hacking at the same dude. You don't really get a lot of those moves where you kind of swing it around and get like a radius thing going.
There's not much AoE with the Leviathan axe.
Yeah, unless you can like throw it, you get the skill where you can time it and you throw it and it bounces off of people. That's really the only thing you have.
Right, but the Blades
attack.
of Chaos are made for it is all crowd control. It is all like focusing in a major area. And if you look at like some of the other weapons in God of War's history, the alt weapons were often like I'm going to focus on this one bad guy. Like you have
the sword, the big sword,
yeah,
or the
Artemis'
hammer.
sword.
Yeah, there's a hammer.
In God of War 3, it's the fists.
Yeah, you get the Nemean system. Like God of War 3 in particular had more chain weapons.
You have 3 chain blades.
Yeah, which I thought was kind of a letdown.
Right.
I always like that one. The Nemean cestus were amazing.
But if you just imagine all the chain blades are in their own category, the Nemean fists were I'm going to focus on this one big guy. And that's the same philosophy here. Leviathan axe is primarily for one enemy or a couple enemies. The Blades of Chaos are for you got a crowd around you.
Yeah, and the blades in God of War for PS4, I'm going to call that God of War 4.
God of 4, yeah.
God of 4. Usually with the axe, if you wanted to get like a big blast, you had to use a runic attack.
Mm-hmm.
With the blades, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You can, as you're comboing, you can kind of move to targets, or you can hit with the R2 and start slamming the things. Or you can do that one move where if you hit the second to last one with the heavy hit, it kind of rolls back and the camera zooms and pans on the actual blades, and he just like that old Nemean Crush, which is now a runic move.
attack. Yeah,
and the runic attacks are fantastic. There were so many times where I was fighting like the Valkyries and stuff where I would do the Cyclone and I had it upgraded all the way to where I was just constantly, it was like a good 5-second attack.
Yeah.
And she was wailing on me and I was taking the damage, but I wasn't getting interrupted.
Yeah.
And I guess that I can say the rage of the blades were coming out where I guess he's like, oh, screw it, I'm just gonna go.
Yeah.
But that can also, if you play it wrong, if they hit you with something hard, they can kill you during that attack.
For sure, yeah, definitely. The Leviathan X is a similar move where it's just where you can just pound R2 the whole time. It's L1 R2, so it's a heavy runic attack, and you can just hit like 6 or 7, maybe 8 even attacks in a row. Where that's just the one where he's slamming the ground and it does the ice AOE attack. You can just keep spamming that R2 if you have it at level 3, and he'll put out like 6 or 7 attacks. But yeah, like you were saying with the Blades of Chaos, you still take damage along the way.
You gotta have that axe upgraded too if you want to be able to try to control a crowd.
Oh yeah,
especially
it's
later in the game, like when you're fighting level 8s and stuff, it's hard.
No, yeah, it's not made to do
but
that.
you can also use that for utility. You can just chunk that axe at someone and freeze them, and like, okay, this hard guy is frozen for a little bit. Let me focus on these guys.
Right.
And then, like, by the time you hit, some of your blade attacks out, you can just put your hand up, get your axe back, and freeze someone else.
Yeah.
It's really up to you, and there's a lot of utility with the combat once you get 2 weapons to mess around with.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like if you think about the Blades of Chaos being like a ranged weapon to keep people at a distance, the Leviathan Axe is bad in like the middle zone. Leviathan Axe is great up close and great at great distance. Mm-hmm. But like the Blades of Chaos control all the middle area, which is really an interesting dynamic to deal with.
Yeah, that's probably the most important area to control too. And also combining that with Atreus' ability you get those 2 different arrows. You get the light arrows, which I used until I got the electric arrows. I didn't use anything else.
It can bounce. It can arc between enemies.
Yeah, you use that, and it also works for his summons too. Like I had the crow summon, and then he would use the crows, and there was these electric crows, and they were just surging energy throughout everyone. And then you're whipping the blades around at the same time, and then you're just after those are going out, you get him to just shoot his 4. And if you have everything upgraded, you can just keep shooting the arrows. It's just like you're just controlling the battlefield. Right. Which later in the game. Like especially the Muspelheim, is it Muspelheim? Muspelheim? Mm-hmm. That's the fireplace.
Muspelheim?
Muspelheim. Yeah, Muspelheim. In those challenges, you are gonna need all the abilities you have. Even in Niflheim, you're gonna need your abilities. Yeah. And you have to learn how to be quick with them too.
So I was listening to an interview with Cory Barlog recently, the creative director of this new God of War, and he was talking about the development of the Leviathan Axe. And he was talking about how early on, there was a disagreement amongst the team where, like, whenever you throw the axe, what is the immediate next step in the axe's process? And I don't want to misquote or anything, but I think for a time it was going to boomerang. Like you throw it and it comes back.
Nearly as cool.
Right, and I think even he implied that was the majority opinion. Is that it should? He was like people. And the argument was people love boomerangs in games, and that's true. I mean, look at Zelda. Every Zelda game has a boomerang. People love boomerangs in games, but they decided ultimately, Corey made it seem like it was his decision, and maybe it was.
Oh man, they made the right choice.
For sure.
Being that boomerang, it wouldn't have been nearly as interesting.
No, it definitely wouldn't. And that's the point that I wanted to bring up is that the Leviathan's your ability to bring that thing back as much as you want, anytime you want, whenever you want, if you're not going into a cutscene, obviously,
or a different realm.
Yeah, or a different realm. That is the innovative mechanic in the game.
Oh yeah.
Besides the camera, I think that
you can throw that axe anywhere. Like you can be like before you get on the boat, you can throw your axe into the water, and you can row to the complete opposite side of the world, and then you hit the triangle button, and you might have to wait like an extra 2 seconds, but eventually just boom, right to your hands.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It's brilliant, man. It's really brilliant, and you know what? It made me think about. Like the future of games in like the Star Wars universe or something, because like every good Star Wars game has a lightsaber throw. Or just anything similar to this, Thor has the most iconic version of that, obviously,
especially with Marvel movies.
But man, that just opened up so many possibilities. I mean, one of my favorite things to do in any game that has a boomerang kind of weapon is try to get them on the return or whatever, because it makes you for a second feel like you just outsmarted
or try to outrun it.
Right? Yeah. It just for a second, it's like I got you. You weren't looking, and I got you right in the back. And the Leviathan axe is that the entire game. It's like you chunk it, and then you get them on the way through,
no matter
right
what.
Back.
It'll phase through a wall too.
Yeah, dude. There were puzzles that were designed to.
Oh, dude, that's the. Oh, thank you for bringing that.
Yeah,
up.
like the bell puzzles or whatever.
The first puzzle in the game where you roll the thing up and you see the gear, and you're like, freeze it, and then the ice element takes over, freezes the gear, so you can stop, walk through, call it back, and then this door closes and this door opens, and then boom, puzzle done. And there's so many puzzles where it's like, wow, I can throw the axe and call it back to wind this winding mechanism, and it's gonna make the ceiling with spikes go up, and the.
There was one puzzle in particular where I was just like, "This is so very clever." It was a bell, and it was in like a steel cage or whatever.
I know what you're talking
about, like a prison cage. And I don't know what the solution was supposed to be, but I did something that worked. And like it was one of those bell puzzles where like as long as it's ringing, then it's active on the chest.
Yeah.
Like
you're near your chest.
Whenever it stops ringing, though, it's no longer active, and you got to hit it again. So, like, if you can imagine, the thing is here, the bell is here. I had to throw it behind the bell, get in front of it, and then return it so that on the way back, the axe would hit it. Because you can't throw it. You can't throw it through
it'll bounce off.
cell. It'll just ting. Yeah. But then you had to, if you go around, whenever it returns, it goes through anything. Any material, it'll cut straight through. And it cut through and hit the bell, and I grabbed it and hit the other two bells.
And that may have been the...
who knows?
I think the puzzle you're talking about had a lightning thing that Atreus was supposed to shoot.
I don't know. All I know is that it was on an island in the lake.
There's one of them where he's supposed to shoot a thing, and it explodes and it hits the bell. But on a similar fashion, whenever you go to Alfheim, the elf place... There's like those strands of like organic matter.
Right, yeah.
And there's one of them where you have to throw it through a cavern on the side.
Yep,
and then walk
around.
through, and then it cuts all the strands.
Yes.
And then you have to cut all of them at the same time to pass through.
Yep.
So the axe is just...
Yeah, that was the innovative mechanic in the game. Alongside the camera, no cuts, no loading times.
Cuts. No loading times.
Right,
but
no loading bars at least.
No loading bar. Well, actually, no, there's a couple moments where you're playing on PS4 Pro, I was playing on regular PS4. There were moments where after like 5 to 10 hours of gameplay where I was just like running to the next area, and it was specifically whenever I was going underneath the bridge to get to Tears, whenever you meet Modi for the second time.
Right.
I actually got the little God of War logo popped up for like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But it stopped the gameplay, and I was like, whoa.
Yep.
But my PlayStation had been running for a long time.
That happened to me when I was trying to use the doors, and like the fast travel door.
And it's extremely excusable.
I did, and I saw Atreus go into the T-pose at one moment.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it was after the scene with Thor, which we can talk about that now. It was after the scene with Thor, and you're going back, and Atreus is like, well, we can run around and do some crazy stuff. And I don't remember what happened, what activated it, but I think going back into the world from that cutscene, Atreus fell about 3 feet. He fell about 3 feet onto the ground, and then he was like, hey, let's go.
That's funny.
And that was the one moment where I was like, the developers are human.
Before we get to Thor, I want to talk about, we talked about Athena a little bit, and some familiar faces. Let's talk about when we saw Zeus in Niflheim.
Yeah.
So in Niflheim, there's a part that Mimir says, "Don't go to that area. You can explore in Niflheim, not Niflheim, Helheim. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And Hell, I'm just gonna call it Hell. In Hell, he's like, hey, look, this is okay. There's just demons and stuff over here, but over here, your mind plays tricks on you. And then when you see a big Zeus face, he's like, Kratos!
Yeah.
And he's like, Zeus? What are you doing here? You're dead. Now, it's debatable whether that's actually Zeus. It's a mirage.
Right, yeah.
It's not really Zeus.
That's what Mimir says. And Mimir is actually shell-shocked. He's like, was that Zeus or whatever?
He's like, I'm hanging off the hip of the bloody ghost of Sparta.
The ghost of Sparta. And then Kratos like, do not say that name.
Don't call me that. Especially around my son, or I'll, I don't know, throw you in the lake. I don't know who.
I'll pluck that other eye out. Don't worry about it. But and then Mimir is just like, oh yeah, it's an illusion. This place plays tricks on your mind, or your greatest fears, or something to that effect.
To see Zeus and Kratos talk again was like, it's like a daddy hit mommy at the dinner table kind of vibe, where you're like, oh god, I don't know what to think.
Yeah, what's gonna happen? But Atreus is like, no, he went.
Atreus pretends like he doesn't hear it, but he really does.
That's what it was.
And he's like, you killed your father.
Right.
And then the parts where Kratos was telling Atreus who he was. There's the first part he tells him, he says, I'm a god, you're a god. Mm-hmm. That's who I am. That's it. And then later in the game, like towards the very, very end, he says exactly who he is. He made a deal with his soul, with a god, and he became his slave, and he killed many people who deserved it and many people that didn't. And all that's in the past now. We're going to be the gods that we choose
to be. Yeah.
Which is very cool.
Remember the story of the stag and the horse?
So
the horse.
So talking about that means that Atreus is part god, and then later in the game, after you fight Baldur and Freya is trying to protect him because it's her son, and I thought it was a bonehead move, but whatever. You kill Baldur, and Freya takes his body like y'all stay away from me. I don't want anything to do with y'all anymore. And then after he tells Atreus they're gods and stuff, they find out that Faye, which is Kratos' wife.
Yeah. What is marriage in this world?
Yeah, Kratos' significant other and Atreus' mom was a giant.
Yeah.
Not like a big, like a huge giant, but she was
of the giant race.
Of the giant race. Yeah. And then so that means that Atreus was part mortal, part god, part giant.
Right.
What other Norse god do we know who's like that? And then you start reading these
Tónleik.
These prophecy panels in the game, and then you find out that he's Loki.
Yep.
And during the game, I kind of pieced it together whenever Mimir, he said, Atreus was like, if I'm a god, what's my power? Can I fly? Can I turn invisible? And then Mimir was like, well, you do have a pretty sharp tongue. You're picking up these languages. Yeah. Like, you don't even know them, and you're picking them up. And I was like, he's Loki, isn't he? I kind of pieced that together whenever he said that. But you kind of got some hints whenever he said, can I turn into a wolf?
Yeah, that was the thing. Well, it wasn't in that moment. That moment, after I saw that scene, I came back to the next day, we were talking about it. I was like, man, that may be my favorite scene in the game so far. Because it was just such like a whimsical, again, naive Atreus moment. I really love that scene. But then after I beat the game, I came back to you and I was like, I should have seen it there. Because wolves, that is Loki's, like, that is his spirit animal or whatever. Like, for whatever reason, Loki in Norse mythology identifies with wolves. Mm-hmm. And that was exactly what Atreus was like alluding to.
He's like, can I turn into a wolf? That was like the first thing.
What's the first spirit summon animal thing that you get?
It's a wolf.
It's a wolf.
Or a pack of wolves.
Yeah.
If you upgrade it.
Well, yeah, definitely.
You get, which is pretty awesome.
So it's all over the place. Like, they painted the walls with, hey, this is Loki, you guys.
Yeah.
But I did find it interesting in that same interview with Cory Barlog. That wasn't the intention all along. They kind of, like, stumbled into him being Loki. Like, they had...
It fits!
Oh, it fits
perfectly.
And in Cory Barlog's, when he was recounting how it came about, he said that, like, some of the other writers came to him and they were like... They basically...
He's Loki.
They basically said, like, what happened at the end of the game. Like, they kind of recounted, alright, here's what happens with Kratos, here's what happens with Faye, blah, 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 blah. And then they say, like... But what if they get his name wrong or something on the wall of text or whatever? What if they call him Loki? And then Cory Barlog at that moment was like slammed his fist down like,
yes!
Why didn't I think of that? It's genius.
Dude, it's perfect.
It fits. It couldn't have fit better.
Also on those prophetic panels, we see this curtain kind of blow up and Atreus misses it because he's off about to go dump the ashes off the cliff. Faye's ashes, and you see this like scene with Atreus holding Kratos, and his stomach is kind of tore open, and there's like stuff coming out. Well, is there stuff coming out of his stomach, or there's stuff that Atreus
I couldn't tell.
I think Atreus may have been saying something, but it looks like Kratos will die.
Right.
And of course, they're in control of their own fate because many times they're talking about fates. And of course, Kratos pretty much killed the sisters of fate in Greece. So he was like, hey, look, fate is what you make it.
Yeah.
But we're led to believe. And Kratos sees that panel. He's like, Atreus is like, we're at the end of our journey. And he sees that panel. He's like, yes, we're at the end. And I was like, don't die, Kratos.
Yeah.
Don't die. And,
but on the subject of of fate and can they control it or not, again, the game leaves that ambiguous. Because Mimir doesn't believe that you can outrun your fate. But Kratos is like, nah, I mean, we can definitely do that.
He's like, I've done it like 3 times.
But then the question, or that raises the question, did Kratos not just fulfill his fate in doing that?
I don't know. It's
whenever they write the history of the series or of the events of God of War, the author could just say, and that was Kratos' fate. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They say that they can outrun fate or they can change fate or whatever. But in the case of Odin, he's trying to avoid Ragnarok at all costs. But in doing so, in having that paranoia, he causes Ragnarok. Odin thinks that if he stores up all this knowledge, all this wisdom, if he gets smart enough and he tries
he can outsmart Ragnarok.
He can out-scheme it. Mm-hmm. But in doing all of that, all of his actions are just leading him ultimately toward Ragnarok.
And Faye, whenever she said that I want these specific trees, I want all this stuff, I want my ashes poured, all of that was part of this whole thing. For them to get to that point, to see it, it's all was planned out. Maybe she even knew she was going to die the way she did. And they don't.
We assume so because she was like a prophetess. Or
whatever. They don't even say how she died. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the very end. They dump the ashes. They go home. The secret ending is you go home and they go to bed, and then they. It says years later.
Right.
And then,
but before you go into that, I love the way that they did it. They're just saying hey man, we can go back home. We should go home.
Yeah, we can go back home. Or
they don't put a marker on your map. They don't point in the direction of the compass or anything. They're just hey, what if? We can go home if you want.
No, that's what I did. I was just kind of okay, I'll just go home. Because I tried to go home before to see if there's anything else in there, and it's locked. You can't get in.
Oh, okay.
So whenever they said, let's go home, I was like, okay, I want to see what else is in there.
Yeah.
What else is Kratos got stashed
That was the best way. That was in step with every way that they try to lead you toward a thing. That was the culmination of their method in leading you towards stuff in that game.
Dude, and then the way you start walking back and they're just talking about their
favorite candy.
They're talking about circus peanuts. They're talking about their future. And the credits are just rolling.
Right.
I thought it was a really beautiful way of displaying the credits like that. And eventually you get back, and then the dwarves are like, hey man, this crazy snow is starting to fall, which is a sign. It will snow the time of 3 summers before Ragnarok happens. And you're like, oh crap. And you go home, you go to sleep. It says years later. And then Atreus wakes up. He's like, Dad, wake up. What's going on? And there's lightning everywhere, and we all know what it is.
Yeah.
You open the door. There's a hooded figure. He throws the robe back. Or Kratos is like, who are you?
Who are you, man?
He's like, who are you? And he throws it back, and then it's Mjolnir, and it's Thor. And you're like, oh my god. And it cuts to black, and then that's the end of the game.
And if you didn't know that was Thor, at the end, Atreus is like, hey man, I saw Thor in a dream.
Yeah. And Kratos is like, oh, it's just a dream. Who cares?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we don't get to fight Thor. We don't see anything we don't see Odin at all. Did you feel disappointed at all with that, or did you feel
with Odin, lack of Thor?
Yeah, with no facing Thor at all, because they kind of lead you on. It's like, well, Thor's the worst. Even Modi, I think it's Modi or Magni, whatever one. He comes back, he's like, look what Thor did to you because I'm a failure.
Right.
And they just talk about how horrible Thor is.
Right. Oh, dude, I forgot to tell you one more thing on Loki or whatever, or foreshadowing who Atreus really is. Mm-hmm. In Norse mythology, do you know who the one to kill Baldur is? It's Loki.
Is it?
In Norse mythology, Loki's the one to kill Baldur.
He did shoot him with the arrow, didn't he?
No, Baldur punches him, and he gets the mistletoe stuck in his fist.
That's right.
Remember, and that's what exercises him of those powers.
So technically,
he was the cause of Baldur's death.
Mm.
Really interesting.
See, I didn't know that.
If anyone is like that well read on their Norse mythology, we may know some people who are.
You're wrong.
They would have seen that, like, oh, this dude, that's
man, this game got it all wrong, boss.
Oh man, but yeah, I thought that whenever I found that out, I was like, dang, that's so smart.
Dude, yeah, that's incredible. I'm glad you brought that tidbit up because I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So we get the Thor ending, which is pretty cool. So I wanted to talk about.
Oh yeah, but you asked if I was disappointed in not seeing Thor.
Yeah, were you?
No, I wasn't. Whenever we were talking on the phone that day before I had ever played it, remember I was like, dude, what if we cross hilts with Thor in this game or whatever? And so like I had that anticipation, but it was like we also talked about later. If you look at God of War as being like the skeleton of the new of like the reboot or whatever, in that game, the only god you really see ever is Ares. I mean, you hear Athena.
You see like their face in the little portals.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, here, use my magic.
Take this cool thing. But the only one you ever see like in importance is Ares. So in this game, the equivalent to that is Baldur, which makes sense.
Is Athena considered a god? And so technically, you see Athena too. In the first one,
right?
You see her like on the boat, but she's not that bad. She's not bad.
Right? Yeah. And you see Magni and Modi in this one too. But so yeah, that was I tempered my expectation on seeing Thor and Odin, so I couldn't have been disappointed. I think the revealing that the stranger was Baldur was huge for me. That like really blew me away because you know that this guy's important. You also know he's not Thor because he's not carrying Mjolnir. And it wouldn't make sense for like someone
But he's on Thor's level of importance.
He is, yeah. And in Norse mythology, I learned this later as well. Baldur was considered by the other gods to be like this image of perfection. Even though like Thor is this warmonger, Odin is like this brilliant schemer, and Baldur is perfect. Baldur is like the one who can do no wrong or whatever. So that was really interesting to me that like this
which is probably why Odin sent him first.
Yeah, maybe so. Like Baldur's not going to screw this up. Let's take that dude down there.
And I guess
if Thor goes, he might like crack the world in half or something.
Yeah, Thor.
He's a bit impetuous.
Yeah, go drink your mead and hang out.
We learned that through like the wardrobes and stuff. That Thor is off the rails.
Yeah, like when he killed the giant with the chisel,
and he was like, "Oh, I meant to destroy that entire village. No big deal."
It just fell over.
Yeah. So yes.
So let's talk about whenever you're exploring in Tyr's temple, which has one of my favorite scenes in the game. You find this panel, this missing panel to this lore piece, right? And you find that Tyr found this way to walk through realms. And Tyr is missing, and they never really say what his fate was. At least I don't think they do.
I thought he got killed.
Or did Odin kill him, I think?
Yeah, I think that was... It may have been just implied, but I think that's...
But he found this way to walk between the realms, and this is going to lead into my final thing I wanted to talk about as well. But we find that he has all these symbols in each corner of that panel, the symbols of war.
Yeah.
And Kratos is like, I'm all too familiar with this symbol. It's the Omega.
Yeah, top right.
The original god of war, the Greece sign for war. And then you also see the Viking or the Norse sign for war, and then you see the Shinto sign.
Well,
for
at the bottom right, it's the Celtic
and Shinto. So that means that this land, this world that they live in, is obviously they all have their own gods, and you can just travel all these worlds, just get on a boat and go to Shinto world, right? And then all of a sudden, you got all these like. That's Japanese, right? You got Japanese gods and samurai.
Is there.
Yeah, from
Dude,
Okami. That would be pretty cool.
Choice.
So that's crazy to think about the future of the franchise.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe this trilogy, if it is a trilogy, maybe it won't all take place in Norse. Maybe it'll all get mixed in together at some point. Maybe Odin's so scared he finds out that he can go and use these other people. So we don't know.
Maybe so. That would be really interesting if Odin, if he outruns his fate all the way to the point that like we're chasing him throughout this entire series.
I think that would be really cool.
Yeah,
that's something I thought about not too long ago, where I was like, I think it'd be cool to mix it all up together.
Yeah, he does like the Joker thing where like Batman's about to punch him out or something, and he grabs a dude and puts him in front, and Batman knocks a henchman out. Odin does the same thing throughout the entire trilogy.
I think that'd be cool because Odin,
for sure.
Odin being this all-father. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not keen at all on Celtic.
Anthony Hopkins.
But like, I'm not sure how powerful they get. But Odin seems to be like super duper powerful.
He's at least equivalent to Zeus. That's kind of the sense they have.
At least.
Yeah.
But one of my go ahead.
I do want to say that in the top. Did you mention the top left symbol?
Did I?
This is the Egyptian mythology.
Oh yeah, Egyptian. I'm sorry. Yeah, Egyptian.
So Greek, you've got Greek, Celtic, Shinto, and Egyptian. And interestingly, on Egyptian, going into the reboot, they considered it was between like Norse and Egyptian mythologies. They weren't sure which way they were going to go. And according to Cory Barlog, they chose the Norse mythology because they wanted to they wanted to exist in that isolation that Norse mythology brings. And I mean, you consider where
also I'm kind of glad we got like snow and cold and stuff.
Yeah, to offset like the beach and like lavish laying down eating grapes that like you get when you live in Greece.
Everyone's wearing like little to no clothes.
Right.
Like the ladies are just totally exposed.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
I kind of prefer like everyone's like wearing fur and like spalders and stuff.
Right. Yeah. So they considered doing Egyptian or Norse, and ultimately they went with Norse because they wanted that isolation that Norse mythology brings. I guess they wanted Kratos to be able to find himself without any sort of interruption. And maybe that's what Kratos was looking for. He was looking to get away from people, to get away from
He didn't want to go to this place that has like slaves
for sure.
And like pharaohs and stuff.
He would have been triggered all day.
He just wants to be in this place by himself.
Exactly.
He's like, oh god, these people need to die.
He just wants to chill, cool off a little bit, hang out in the snow.
But it's funny you bring that up because the Egyptian plan was back when David Jaffe did.
Right.
I told you about this earlier.
Yeah.
But whenever David Jaffe helped design God of War, he was like, hey, whenever he's done with this, we're going to Egypt and we're going to Egyptian God world.
Yeah.
And the Sphinxes, they're there because God of War came with Kratos came with a Gorgon head and turned him to stone, and that's why the Sphinxes are there to this day.
Right.
And he talked about his plan for them going in between all these mythologies and stuff.
Yeah. So it doesn't seem they're definitely carrying that vision over.
And who knows? I mean, whenever you're in Tyr's vault, you find more than just that panel. You find treasures and stuff from Egypt. Like you find like these sphinxes and stuff.
Puts on the hat.
You find this urn with Kratos on it, and he's got the Blades of Chaos, and he's hiding it. But one of my favorite scenes comes from that temple, and it's the drink. Whenever he's got the was it Lemian wine?
Yeah, that's right.
And then Atreus is like, "Oh, it smells like rotten eggs," and he's like, drink it. And then he drinks it. He's like, oh, and then Kratos like chugs it with that serious Kratos face, and he just kind of looks at him. He's like, oh. Yeah. And it's like that is the closest we ever get to Kratos being humorous on purpose, like being a dad. Like it's that scene it warmed my heart to see that scene. I was like, oh my god.
Another interesting tidbit about that, because I watched I've looked at a lot of Cory Barlog interviews because I've really been infatuated with this game. But he mentioned that scene was put in there specifically because the day before they decided on that scene, he had that experience with his son. Like Corey and his son were sitting around. I don't know what they were drinking.
He let him drink some wine.
Yeah, I don't know if it was wine. It could have been chocolate milk for all I know. I don't know. But they had the same kind of like call and response, like kind of thing. And whenever he was talking to the team to put it in the game, someone rebutted like, that's really corny. Not knowing that Corey did it. Like, Corey was like, hey, what if Kratos and Atreus have this really touching moment? And they're like, oh, I don't know, that's that's corny. And
he's a dad.
Exactly. And Corey was like, yeah, it's corny, you dick. It's corny.
Put it in.
Yeah.
Like, to see Kratos be corny. I mean,
it's really cool, man.
The joke is that, dads are always corny.
For sure,
dad jokes. Dad jokes. And to put that in there, I thought it was so cool. And it's not over the top though. It's not like a super corny moment.
Right.
It's just it was perfect.
Yeah,
I think
and they don't like drag it way out. You don't see.
He goes and he just throws it back. Yep. And then I think Atreus does it too. He goes
Yep, that was like the moment that he finally like let his guard down a little bit, but immediately he's like, we got to get back to work. And you don't see Kratos telling dad jokes for the rest of the time.
And you never see him vulnerable.
No, you don't.
I mean, every now and again you see him vulnerable whenever Atreus is in trouble,
right? But
never vulnerable like he's allowing himself to be. And I thought that was incredible.
Yeah.
So the last thing, unless you have anything else you want to talk about.
No, I believe. Yeah,
touch on everything.
We're good. Yes.
The last thing I want to talk about, and this is my biggest disappointment with the whole game, and that is a very huge overstatement. And when I say disappointment,
it's a 7.
When I say disappointment, it's just it's a personal thing for me. Sure. The transition from God of War 3 to God of War 4. Mm-hmm. I know they left it ambiguous, like, hey, I just kind of showed up to this world, and throughout these very ambiguous hints, I found out that all of this exists on the same plane, and you can just kind of go from, like we said earlier, you can go from Greece, which is utterly destroyed and non-existent now, you can go from there to Norse world. You can just kind of travel there.
Yeah.
But at the end of God of War 3, Kratos stabs himself with the Blade of Olympus, which is like this big.
It's a big old sword, man.
Like
yeah, we see a scar throughout the entire this
well,
game.
but that scar was there from God of War 1. Whenever they throw the tree, so that scar was always there.
Yeah.
Whenever Ares throws the tree, and this is me being a gamer.
I remember that.
Gamer nerd. Whenever you get to the Temple of Pandora.
Right.
Ares throws
from
that
across
tree,
the world.
Across the world and stabs him, and then whenever he comes back from Hades, he has that scar from
Right.
that point on. But they never explain, like, did Faye nurse him back to health? They don't explain anything about him stabbing himself with the weapon that can kill
Zeus.
that can kill Zeus and kill everything. It's the same weapon that he used to split Kronos in half almost,
right.
cutting his intestines out. And maybe they just were like, that never happened. Yeah. But they don't leave it open. They don't clear that up. Yeah. I feel like if Kratos just would have been like, I met your mother because she found me and she nursed me back to health, and that's how
Is this the How I Met Your Mother
reboot? Like, I don't know. That's my answer.
No, I my read on it, because I totally see that. My read on it was that Kratos can't be killed. Similar to Baldur, not like can't be killed. He's never gonna die. But Kratos has he's got the most drive of every god in Greek mythology. Kratos is going to will himself to survive. He crawled out of hell twice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Kratos he's going to survive. When he does finally die, it's because he accepts it.
Yes.
That's my
the
read
only
on it.
That's the only way, and I'll cry like a baby back,
rib?
A baby back rib. No, but the way I saw it, as you know, when I finished God of War 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I was way younger. I always just kind of accepted, like, well, there's no Hades left for him to go to.
Yeah.
All those spirits are flying away, and it's like, well, I guess he just can't die.
Well, his physical body should have broken down, and his soul would have left. Or something.
And that's another question: is like, Athena was still there, not just as in Kratos' head, because she was supposed to receive that spark from Kratos to become the new all mother of this land.
Yeah.
So she's actually still there, which makes me think that maybe that Athena we saw was really her.
Right.
But also, it's like, where do all those spirits go? Where did Kratos' old family go to? You know, do they move to a different realm of hell? Like, do they go to Helheim, or what happens? They leave all that, and I don't think any of that will be answered. I don't think it needs to be. It's just me being really particular.
Yeah, some interesting holes left there.
But that's something that if I got the chance to talk to Cory Barlog, I would ask him that. I'd be like, what was your idea between the transition between God of War 3 and God of War 4? If he just wanted to retcon it and be like, oh, well, the whole stabbing thing never really happened.
I don't think that would happen.
But whatever it is that he had to say, I would accept it. I just want answers.
Yeah. I do find it interesting, because you mentioned him, like, traveling from, like, the Greek realm or whatever to the Norse realm. Whenever they do get to Tyr's vault, Kratos immediately recognizes, he's like, oh, Tyr figured it out. He figured out how to cross between realms. Kratos has done it. Kratos knows that you can do that. He doesn't ever express it. He never says, like, hey, check this out. I'm from a different place. I'm the first person ever to do it. He doesn't do that. But when they get to Tyr and they see, for Mimir, that's a revelation. Like, whoa, Mimir, he did this. Or, like, Tyr, he did this. But for Kratos, it's just like, oh, he figured it out. Like,
maybe there's a trick to it.
Somewhere Kratos in his mind had to have been like, I wonder how he did it. Because I did it this way. I floated across. My lifeless body floated across until I landed on the shore.
Whenever I was younger and I finished God of War 3, I always thought, like, because that was the rumor, was like, oh, well, he's going to go to Egypt next, because that's what they said.
Right.
I always thought that, like, maybe he stabbed himself and he just kind of fell into this, like, Samurai Jack type portal, right? And just kind of gets poofed into another realm. And then, like, maybe that magic is some kind of fate or destiny.
Well, the final scene in God of War 3 is just a shot of the cliff that he dies on with, like, a blood trail, a slick of blood, into the ocean. So yeah, he definitely fell, and something happens along the way.
Yeah,
and like he and Tyr have, like, a similar way about them. They're both gods of war. They both figured out how to travel between realms. They're both in conflict with the other gods. The only difference was in Kratos' place of origin, he killed every god, whereas Tyr brought peace between all the races.
And Tyr sounded like a great guy, by the way.
Good dude, man. Invite him to the barbecue.
And he had a pretty good armor set, too. I used it for a good portion of the game, actually. But yeah, that's all really I had to say. Do you have anything else you wanted to bring up about God of War?
Overrated, man.
Overrated?
No, I think this game is as close to a perfect game as I might have ever played.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah.
I think I'm right there with you. I think this game is incredible. Would you give it a perfect score, like out of 10? Would you give it a 10 out of 10?
I would probably give it a 10, yeah. Now, I do want to say that...
And I know you don't throw around 10. You don't throw around 10s like they're nothing either.
I mean, I gave this game a 10.
Super Mario Bros. 2?
I don't know. I didn't look and pointed. But I'll have to see. I'll have to see in about a year or two. I really want to see how I feel about this.
Yeah, let the luster wear off a little bit. Go back and play it. I think it's safe to say. I mean, I'm coming off of a God of War high for sure. But there's just so many things about this game that I can hardly even I'm too scared to write a review of this game because I don't even think I would cover it all.
Right.
This game is incredible, and
I
think
it's an achievement.
So far, this is my game of the year, of course. Now there's not much competition right now, but coming October when you've got you got games like Spider-Man coming out in September. You got Red Dead. I think Red Dead's really going to have to do something to wow me to step this down.
Right.
And usually, I don't have that concrete of an answer. Like last year's Game of the Year discussion, it was just like, oh my god, I cannot. It's going to be hard. Other than Zelda, it was like I don't know how to rearrange all this list. And now it's like, no, that's number one, and it's not going anywhere for a while.
Right.
But yeah, that's good to hear that you're on the same.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's
brain length.
It's an incredible game. It's definitely an achievement. It's great to see Santa Monica Studio get back to premiere form, and I can't wait to see what they do with the series going forward.
Yeah, dude, I agree. I guess we'll hear what Jacob and Steven have to say later.
The last point I want to make is because the Leviathan Axe is technically a new weapon. I think it's entered the pantheon of video game weapons up there with the gravity gun and the Blades of Chaos, and the Halo grenade. I think it's reached that level of innovation.
Some
fun.
might say it's God tier.
Oh, I'm leaving.
Corny joke.
Kratos?
I could be a dad.
Yeah, it's incredible game. Incredible game.
Thanks for watching, everyone. That's the show. That's our spoiler cast. If you like that, please like, comment, subscribe. Give us a like to tell us you like it. You can comment to tell us anything you didn't. You can subscribe if you want to see more cool stuff like this. You can click all these different areas for different things that we make. And if you're listening to us on our RSS feed, thank you so much for listening. And subscribe to us on whatever thing that you're listening to, because it could be just numerous things like iTunes. Give us a 5-star review on that, by the way, or SoundCloud, or Podcast Addict, or Stitcher, or whatever. Thank you so much for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.